All right, so welcome to the KCGL session on getting started in the game industry. As you know, we have three guests here. They've already kind of introduced themselves, but I will do it again. So we have Danny joining us, former GSE student who's now an indie dev. We have Fabian joining us, who has his studio Dirty Paws, and Sebastian, who's working for, or who has the project or studio. I don't know where you stand right now, Fire Totem Games, but I guess we will hear more detail about that later.
Yes.
If the audience that is here, if you have questions in between, just either feel free to speak up or drop them in the text channel, in the GSE events general text channel. You can just write whatever questions you have in there. Yeah, so let's jump right in. Does anyone want to volunteer to start?
Yeah, can gladly do that.
All right, great. So Fabian, why don't you start by telling us who you are and what you're currently working on?
Okay, gladly. As you've said, I'm Fabian. Maybe many of you guys, know you from at least the latest in-person game jam at university. Together with my co-founder Daniela, who is sadly not here today because of her mother's birthday, but usually she's around. We're the team behind Dirty Paws Studio. Maybe you have seen the logo somewhere else. We're not that big on marketing, one of our flaws. But yeah, we're a small part-time indie studio in Lakeside Park. And while we are not directly related to GSE, so we were never GSE students, that was a little bit before our time. Yeah, we're basically growing out of the old computer science part of the game development, game studies in Klagenfurt.
And you have a game that you're currently working on?
Yes. Totally forgot about it. Yeah, we've been working our Octopus game, Project Octopus, for around 1.5, 2 years now. We stopped in between and currently shelved it off a little bit because we switched to another smaller project due to some circumstances. Can talk about them later, gladly. Now we're currently developing the working title called Electric Alps. It's a small puzzle game, so to say, learning puzzle game about electrical installations. So to get people in touch with, not literally, but to learn how electricity in your house would work.
So it's kind of also like a serious game a bit?
Yeah, totally.
But you're also doing it as Dirty Paws?
Yes, it's the same team behind it. It's Daniela, me, and a friend of us, a musician from LA, who is not officially part of the studio, but is kind of a +1. Yeah. So still the same people behind that.
So as far as I know, Daniela is your artist, right? Artist and graphic designer. And what are you doing at Dirty Paws?
As you said, Daniela's main focus is graphic and basically everything UI related. It's a huge part of our new game. Wasn't that big in our old game, and also all the asset stuff. I'm mainly doing all the tech stuff, so the classic programmer, and also working on the game design this time because I'm actually I went to an electrical engineering school, so I know all the basics behind that, and the interesting setup because she's a kind of my first test person when I want to map those real engineering stuff to a game-like stuff. So she started doing the basically kind of user-related stuff of the game design, and all the rest we are working on those.
Cool. My next question would actually be, like, back in the day, how did you even get started? Did you start with the octopus idea, or did you have the dream anyways to have a studio? And yeah, how did it all start? And who did you contact? What did you do as your first plan? How did you get funding? All this kind of stuff.
Yeah, should I do the long story or a short one of our history of our game studio? What do you prefer?
I would love the long one,
Okay,
if you
still
don't
trying to
mind.
keep it short. As for my case, when I went into game design the first time was actually when I was 12 or 13 years old. Because back then, the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind was freshly out. I didn't have internet back then, but I got a fresh copy from my parents for my, I think, 13th birthday, was that? And on the CD was the Elder Scrolls construction kit, alongside with a 200-page manual. And 13-year-old me, it had the whole summer of playing around with that, building some dungeons and quests, something like that. And from then on, I really wanted to get into game development, either the other way or then one way or another. And then I chose especially for the engineering and programming school in Frankfurt, just to get how to learn to program, basically. And during that whole time, I knew I wanted to do something related to games, game development or game design, something like that. But it went a little bit to the back of my head during that school time because, yeah, as you know, you're busy back then. And then when I was at university, I think it was my third or fourth semester in 2013, I did basically all the game-related stuff at university. So back then it was only 2 or 3 courses in computer science and media and communication management, I think. And yeah, that was my first contact with actual game development on a semi-professional or academic level. And that's also the time when I started attending all the game jams. So I think it was my 15th or 16th game jam now, the last one. Yeah, also started to work part-time next to university. So I got some experience in programming, project management, and technical project management. And a few years back, I met Daniela at university. And yeah, we became friends, started working in the same company. And we noticed that we both very much into game development, took her alongside to some game jams. And then it started really a little bit gradually for 1 or 2 years. We were just talking about, yeah, maybe we could do some game studio, something like that, or do something in our free time. Then we started doing some smaller game-related games in our free time. And back in 2019, when we were working in the same company, both of us were like, meh, we didn't really want to work on those projects anymore. And we just kind of went all in. I finished my master's thesis, I got the funding for that, and Daniela cut back her time a little bit, so from 30 to 20 hours. And when we just started for a year messing around with everything related to game development, we're not really working on the game itself, but Daniela was looking at 3D art. I was looking at all kind of programming aspects, game design aspects, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was late 2019 when we just went up straight up to the Build Gründerzentrum at Lakeside Park. So it's a kind of a startup incubator. And parallel to that, we just went to the Austrian Chamber of Commerce and just asked them, hey, is there something where we can start with, or how should we start with funding a studio in Austria, Carinthia specifically? And yeah, that was basically the start of all that. And yeah, then another year went by. We just did that halfway, and then we got the same funding as Sebastian. Via Totem Games became just this year. So we got funded for 8 months, 9 months, I think. I think it was 9 months, where we could work on our Project Octopus game. And yeah, that was half a year ago. And since then we worked again. So after the funding, Daniela quit her job so that she could work full-time on the game, and same as me. And after the program, we were deciding what we should do. Should we search some investors, search for publishers or crowdfunding, or just we had some offers to do project work for other companies. so making games for how's it called? For booth games, something like at at the Connect. Someone wanted to make a game for their booth at the Connect at university. But then we both decided to work part-time so that at least that to secure our financial situation. Yeah, that was the whole story from 13-year-old me to now.
Thank you. Yeah, I already took like a lot of notes that are super useful. For example, knowing about the Gründerzentrum and Austrian Chamber of Commerce and that kind of stuff. I think these are really good points to know for
Mhm.
aspiring indie game devs. And also knowing that you also worked other jobs on the side. Because I guess it's a bit of an illusion to think that you can just start a studio and then you're good with the money. And yeah.
Yeah.
So one more question about that. Was there a huge amount of bureaucracy involved, would you say, in founding a studio? Because I imagine that to be a nightmare, kind of.
Not really. To be honest, we haven't officially funded a legal company right now because there's just no need for it if you aren't really selling or having employees, because it's only money involved. And as soon as you have a company, you can't, or at least the social services you get in Austria a little bit scaled down, so you can't get anything related to COVID relief, something like that. Back then we didn't know about that, but it has no really upside if you're not securing your trademark or doing any legal stuff. But getting started, to be honest, it was a very pleasant experience, because in the beginning, when we went to the incubators and the Chamber of Commerce, there's specifically a Corinthian Chamber of Commerce near the train station. We were like, they would be not that into video games, and wouldn't take us seriously. But for the first moment on, they took us completely seriously and were very professional about that. So that was a huge relief. And we showed them some numbers about how big the game industry actually is worldwide, and Austria is just that much behind. And yeah, they like that, and I think they're very open to game-related stuff, especially here in Carinthia, because as of now, there aren't really any studios. I think officially there's Rarebyte registered in Carinthia, but they're operating in Graz, and there's some other companies who are doing some games as projects for other companies, but they don't consider themselves to be really game developers.
So my next question would be more related to like the day-to-day life as an indie game dev, because I wanted to know if there was anything that surprised you about it, or if there were any challenges that you had to overcome.
Oh yeah, there were so many. First of all, I think a lot of people asked me at the game jam. Sorry, I was a bit confused about the cat in Sebastian's background. A lot of people asked me at the game jam how we actually started, how we are organizing everything. And I think it's fair to say that our case is not the go-to case for GSE students, because both Daniela and me have an IT background. So we had never a difficulty finding a job or financial secure thing to basically get our everyday money. So that may be different if you come from a non-technical background. Yeah, but still challenges. I think one of the main challenge we had was, first of all, both of us were very perfectionistic. So we both want to do, if we do something, our whole heart and mind is into that. And we wasted so much time during our funding on so little things where it just, if I think about it now, I was a complete idiot to waste the precious time on such things that just didn't work out. I worked for months on something that we just dropped in the end. And yeah, that's one thing. To show that a little bit back, there's a reason why so many games out there have so obvious flaws where you think I could fix that. Okay, they know they can fix it too, but it just costs time, and time is your most precious resource. That was one of the main challenges. And the other one was more of, what is that, a personal nature. When we really started out with going full-time into indie game development, we were thinking, yeah, I would do the coding, Dalila would do the art, we would do the story together. Game design was a little bit on my side, so she could focus on the art, but it would be both of us, and then of the marketing, etc., the organizational producement stuff. So as an indie game developer, you have to wear so many hats, and to be honest, we were totally overwhelmed by it. So, well, as I said, that goes hand in hand with the being perfect, because you want to invest as much time as possible in your specifics. Like me, it was programming and developing, and for the it was art. But if you know you have to use maybe a third, half, maybe more of your time to do stuff you're really unfamiliar with and insecure with, like social media marketing, I can already see Sebastian grinning at me because we are so bad at this. Yeah, and that was a moment when we then thought to ourselves how we should proceed with our indie game company. And that was the main reason why we said we want only to do it as a part-time job, because not our whole life depends on it. So if it works out, we have learned something. It's a really great experience right now, and we're doing our best in all that regard. And I know we have to switch some things up, but yeah, we were talking a lot about that it was not just fitting for both of us. It may be for other kinds who are more into the organizational parts and more into social media. We were never really social media people. We thought we could learn them just alongside it, but that just didn't happen. I think that was the main challenge, to get out of it what you really want to achieve, or how you think your indie game life would be.
Mm-hmm. I guess social media is like a whole separate job for an entire person to do,
Totally.
and keep it up. Actually, Sebastian will tell us more about this later, I hope. One more question that I just that just came to mind, which is maybe a bit more personal, but so you don't have to answer it. But how do you feel about now? What is your experience with opening a studio with a friend?
Um, she's not here, so I can talk more open about it. um, there are upsides and downsides, to be honest. On the upside, we've been working together in an IT company, as I said beforehand, so we knew how we should approach each other and how we should split up the work, something like that, and also how to say something if it just doesn't work out. So in that regard, it's actually good when you start out with a friend, but I know why you're asking the questions, because there are also downsides to that. Because there's just some situations, and there have been situations in our case where both of us were like, I could strangle that one over there, and it would have been a purely business related partnership. I think it's easier to be upfront with each other, and because back when you have a business relationship, you don't care that much about making the other person angry or making them sad. But in that case, it happened a few times where we're just not really querying, but discussing a little bit. And when we are gaming in our free time together, some online games, you knew exactly when there was something in the air for a few days, a few weeks. Yeah. Basically, I think it's not that bad if you would open a indie studio with your partner. I think I wouldn't do that.
You
Because
would do that, or you wouldn't do
I
that?
wouldn't, because it would take everything from the company, all problems, anything back home. So at least Daniela and me are not living together. We're not partners. So we at least have some room in our private time.
Okay. Also, another question: if there would have been the GSE program back in the day, when you came to the university, would you have actually gone for that master's? Or do you?
I think I would have gone for both.
Okay.
I did my master's 2 years ago in computer science, and was just totally happy that I finished my master's thesis. I didn't want to do another studies in that regard. But if the GSC would have started maybe 2 years earlier, I think I would just study both of them because they're a little bit overlapping, so not that much more work.
Yeah. Okay, then my last question to you would be just if you had one piece of advice to give to a person who wants to become an indie dev, one really solid piece of advice, what would you say? If you
Um,
said it.
don't only follow the things you see on social media and on tutorials in YouTube. I think that I cannot understate that one. Because if you have a huge survivorship bias in that regard. You only see podcast, or you only hear podcasts or see YouTube devlogs and interviews with people that have succeeded. And for every successful person, there is an uncountable number of people who just didn't make it. And it's much more likely that you fall in that category than the successful one. Yeah, I don't mean to discourage anybody. It's just the ways they present, like going full-time into game development, doing devlogs, and being huge in social media, and finding crowdfunding or finding a publisher. Those are not the only ways that you could you could organize your indie game journey, so to say. I wouldn't say company, but journey. As I said, I never saw online that somebody was arguing that having a side job is the best thing ever, but for us it was the best thing ever, because in the 20 hours we're working for our jobs, we get good money. It's, to be honest, it's better paid than we would if we would do some game dev related stuff for other companies, just because it's very well paid. And in the remaining 20 hours in the week, we can just focus on purely what we want to achieve without having to worry pleasing anybody, pleasing any investors, or pleasing any community. I think that's my biggest advice. Just look for the options you have, and yeah, listen to your heart in that regards, because even if your brain says financially that's the best way to go, if you're totally unhappy with the situation you are in, then you won't really gain that much for yourself.
Okay, thank you for that advice. I saw the others nodding along a lot, so I guess people agree. Okay, are there more questions for Fabian from the audience? If not, then Sebastian, Danny, who of you would like to continue?
Thank you.
I can go next.
I will basically mostly ask you the same questions, so you already know what's coming. But yeah, why don't you tell us more about who you are and what you're working on right now, and also the recent developments with Fire Totem games?
Yeah, so my name is Sebastian, and I live here in Villach, so quite close to Klagenfurt. My education started in the HTL Lastenstraße in Klagenfurt with mechatronics, and then I continued with the systems engineering and systems design bachelor and master program at the FH Kärnten. And I have 8 years of working experience in Infineon now. But since I was a child, since I could hold a controller, I was a big fan of video games, and I think this will never change. So if I retire, I will play. I think I will still play games, like most of you. And yes, during through my education and my work, I got quite a lot of programming experience. And 2017, I had the idea to combine my hobby with what I can do, so the programming skills, and start developing games myself. And I went on YouTube, watched some some
Take
practice
another
tutorials is good. I basically watched all of them, I think. And whatever other tutorials I could find, and just started programming my own stuff and small games. I beat Fabian when it comes to game jams, because I participated in 20 now. And the best game jams are those in Klagenfurt, because being on site is really amazing, and seeing and talking to your colleagues instead of just having an online game jam where you're just working for yourself, and it's kind of boring. It's good. It's good to make small games, but it's the best to do it with others together in the same place. And 2017 I started. 2019 I turned 27, and as Fabian, I was also a little bit annoyed by my job. It was the same stuff. It was not complicated, and I needed to change, and I really wanted to go into the game development. And I set myself a goal that I want to be full-time game dev by the time I turn 30, which is in a little bit over a month. So this turned out great. I will come to that soon. And 2019, I discovered that we have game studies and engineering studies, our master program at the university. I think it was 2 weeks before it started, or something like that. And then I talked to my back then girlfriend, now wife, if that's okay. Talked to my boss if I can reduce my work time, and checked if I still can apply for the program. The answer was yes, and I think that was one of the best steps I did. I already have a master degree, but I did not do the studies for the additional degree. I just did it to meet people that are like-minded, that I get some contacts in the Austrian game scene, and to really follow my dream and get started in the game dev scene. And during the study, which I did not finish yet, Corona happened and I got a little bit lazy. Some of you might know, but I will finish it, of course. And last year, around this time, I had the genius idea to improve my game development skills, and I started a hashtag on Twitter, which only I used, but whatever. It was called Tutorial June, and each day I did a different tutorial about stuff that I have on my to-do list for quite some time, or new stuff that I find out, like how to do a water shader, how to do clouds, how the terrain system is working, how 3D animations are working, and what else. And during that time, I also worked on a small spider, on this inverse kinematics or procedural animation, how the legs would move. And it turned out that this is now the game that I'm working on, because I posted it on Twitter, got a lot of feedback of people liking it and asking the question, it's not a real spider, it only has 4 legs instead of 8, and can it climb up the wall? And I then decided to explore this game a little more. Or it was not a game at all at the beginning. I just thought about how difficult can it be to climb up walls and around stuff, and I did it. Then this creature, because it was just a block, just a cube body, and I was not sure where front and the back was, so I popped some goggly eyes on the front, which people liked. And then things came together. Then I added jumping and some cute animations, then made a different area to run around and build your webs, and then web swinging, and all this stuff happened. And we then presented or applied our game for the Suwotron live pitch, which is a pitch competition from game devs here in Austria. Sorry, cat. And yeah, we did that, and it was in end of November last year. We then pitched our game there. It was a 10-minute pitch with some questions from the jury, and we won that in the game prototype category, and got then some extra training from the jury. And we were then looking for a publisher, but then decided to wait and see if we can get the funding from the KWF. And as it turned out, yes, we got it. So basically, only I got it, because my two colleagues that are also part of the game are not students on the university. So and they are not in Carinthia right now. So only I got it, but I have the biggest part in the project. And now, since 4 days, 1st of June, I'm now I have my office in the Lakeside Park, and I'm working full time on the game now. Yeah.
So did you really quit your job now for this?
I quit a very good job, actually. Very
Okay.
well-paying job, but yeah, my passion was somewhere else, and my interests were not the same as the company. So I had to do the step. It was difficult to make the switch, but just in these 4 days now, I'm so happy that I was bold and brave enough to really do it.
So you just went for it.
Yeah.
And what are you planning for the close future or for the far future with a webbing journey? So what will you work on next, and what will you focus on now that you are working full-time on it?
Full time. So the funding is 9 months, as Fabian already mentioned, and the plan is to get it close to finish, close to the release within these 9 months for the PC version. We also plan to have it on Switch as a second platform, because it just fits from the art style and everything. But we really want to have it finished so that after the funding is over, we could get or should start getting some money in. There is an option for an additional funding, which is more from Austrian-wide funding, which I talked with Matthias, who's the professor, about, which I could then attach after I'm finished with that funding. So I will try to get it, and then also my two colleagues will see some money and can work really part-time or full-time if they want, if we have enough workload for everybody. And then the plans are, of course, to start a studio in Klagenfurt. First, I was thinking about opening it in Villach because it's closer for me, but it's just stupid if you have all the GSE students in Klagenfurt and you are not putting the studio there, because the current problem with the students is that they don't have a good place for an internship or work after they are finished. And a lot of them are going to Graz or Vienna or outside of Austria for the internship and then later on job. So Carinthia is investing effort in teaching them, and then they are leaving the country, which is just sad, because Austria, as Fabian mentioned, is not well presented in the game development scene, and especially Carinthia with not many famous names, and my plan is to change that.
So for the, let's say, faraway future, you're planning on Fire Totem games becoming bigger and bigger, and having GSE interns. That's great. That's actually really great to hear. Another thing I wanted to ask you, because you said that you did a lot of stuff on Twitter, and also we talked with Fabian about how much time this takes doing the whole social media stuff. I want to ask, first of all, how how much you think that helped you in getting this funding, that you put so much time and effort into social media, and also, yeah, go ahead.
The first thing I have to mention here is that without Twitter, this game would not exist at all. So by me sharing or doing this tutorial June and sharing all my progress that I did, I really forced myself to post at the end of the day what I have done. It takes half an hour to an hour really to prepare a good post. So that's just thinking about the time investment. If you really want to make a short GIF or video or whatever, thinking about what you want to record and then really record it, and then it does not work the first few times, then you have to record it again, and then thinking about the good text that you change 3 to 4 times before you really post it, because once you post it on Twitter, there is no edit button. Maybe we will get that in the future, but with Elon Musk taking over. But you really have to think about this, what style you post, and I got in. I was not into it, but I really started enjoying and loving sharing my stuff. And via the feedback that I got from the community, this game evolved. So there were some in general feedback. So what you get, you invest some time into creating this post, and then if you are lucky, people will see it and then like it and comment back that it looks amazing and whatever. And this is really pushing me again to go further. And this is a continuous feedback loop or motivation loop that really drives you to do more. Because most of the time, or a lot of people are afraid to share their work in progress stuff because the graphics are not amazing or whatever. Just throw it out there, as everybody says, or if you watch any tutorial, your first game will be trash. Just release it and go to the next one. It's the same with posting stuff on the internet. Just do it and you will get better, and the feedback you get, and also the community, that the game dev community on Twitter is really, really great. So there's no, I did not experience any negativity there yet. So everything that with everybody I chatted, everywhere was so positive. And I also found some friends which I really enjoy writing with, but I have never seen them in real life or heard their voices. But they are like, one of them is calling me bro, and yeah, we are then commenting on each other's posts, and it's just so much fun to chat with him. And yeah, it's just a great place to hang out and get motivated and motivate others. So leaving a like or a comment is not much work, but can go a long way, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I think you also mentioned, though, that you don't, if I remember correctly, you don't really use Twitter to build a fan base, but more to reach out to fellow game devs, right? And a fan base, you said, would rather be built on nowadays TikTok.
Yes. So Twitter, you have all kinds of people on Twitter, but if you are posting stuff from your game, you mostly put in hashtags for game dev, indie game dev, and stuff like that. And then you will attract fellow game devs. So people that can give you good feedback and help you, but those are not the people who will buy your game at the end. Maybe some of them will, but it's not the player base you aim for. And I also started posting on TikTok in January and February. So was a little bit lazy last month, but this will start back. We'll be back on track in the next few weeks, because I now have the time to really prepare all these videos. And on TikTok, I immediately saw that there are a lot more players and people that. So the first few comments you get is, what's the name of the game? Where can I download it? Is it free? Will it be out for Xbox and PlayStation? And people are really interested in the game directly. And a lot of them are playing it, which you can see on itch. As soon as I started on TikTok, the downloads or views on itch skyrocketed. some highs that I never really had, and people played it, and they also mentioned it in comments that they really enjoyed it, and they are waiting for the full release and everything. Yeah. So that's, I think, the marketplace for today's games. And a lot of game devs already got very successful and with millions of followers. And yeah.
So about posting things, can actually all three of you post links to your studios or your games in our text chat also, so that we can check them out?
Yeah.
And then I would again ask you something else, going away a bit from the social media. Again, this general question: what is the biggest challenge for you in indie game dev?
Biggest challenge. At the moment, I'm just posting my 3 links here in the chat, but I don't forget. Okay, and everything. I changed my logo on Twitter for this month.
Okay.
I like changing the logo up a little bit from time to time, like having for Halloween or Christmas a different logo. It might confuse some people if you change it because they are used to the same logo. So I go back to the same one. Yeah, biggest challenges. One big challenge I would say is motivation. So really staying motivated, which I overcame back then with Twitter. So getting this feedback from people really helped me motivate. And yeah, also for the motivation, I would then say every person is different when it comes to motivation. Like if you look at the typical student, if you give him an appointment or some homework which he has to finish in 1 month, then he will finish it in the last 2 days, most likely, or in the last night. So some students, we included, like to postpone stuff or what's it called? Procrastinate. That is a problem, especially when I have goals that are far in the future. So I like having really short milestones. I like what I'm doing a daily stand-up meeting with my team. So every morning we chat for 15 minutes to check what everybody is working on, if there are any problems or things that should get higher priority, and then we start off with our day, and that really helps to control yourself also a little bit, because if you are having only weekly meetings, then you might slack around a little bit for 1-2 days and then just start working, and that way you really work more, or I work more. So it's basically just for me. And yeah, challenges, Fabian mentioned perfectionism, which also part of myself, but I really try to ignore it as much as possible, so that I really can, because it is this typical Pareto principle, like 80-20. 80% of the work is done in 20% of the time, and the last 20% take up 80% of the time. So yeah, and often this 80 or maybe 90% are enough. You don't need the full 100, and you really have to stop yourself and say, yeah, that's enough work, and I will just throw it out. And all the small, you yourself, when you are drawing a picture, you make all these small lines, and you know exactly what lines are a little bit crooked or not perfect. But if somebody else looks at this picture, they won't see it. They just won't see the small mistakes that you made, and because they are also not looking at it for the time you looked at it. And if it's not perfect, then it's, as long as it's good enough, as long as you are not doing or performing under what you're used to. So if I put out a good game with a good quality, then the next game should not be lower. I always try to improve myself from day to day. So another good saying is that don't try to be better than somebody else, try to be better than yourself yesterday. So just improve. That's also something I recommend all the game devs. So this is, I think, one of the last questions you ask Fabian. I would really say to anybody, never stop learning. And just, there are so many cool YouTube videos out there. You can learn everything on YouTube. You just have to find it. And just watch the videos, try to follow it or create something yourself with the techniques, and throw it on Twitter or Reddit or whatever. And yeah, get in contact with other game devs, and yeah, have some fun. Have as much fun as possible.
Okay, thanks for this advice. By the way, for people who joined later, if you have any questions in between, feel free to just speak up and ask them, or type them in our text chat next to G Events text channel. Yeah, I have now a general question that came to mind after both Sebastian, you, and Fabian, you spoke. So you both went for funding from the government, basically, but how come none of you went for crowdfunding actually? Or did you ever consider it?
We considered it, but crowdfunding is an interesting story, because most people consider crowdfunding just as another marketing tool to get attention, because the money that most video game companies go for is way too less for really funding the project for the next whatever months or years. Because if I have a team of 3 people and I go on Kickstarter for 10,000 euros to finish the game within the next 1 year, then the math does not check out at all. And a lot of them manage to surpass their goals by tenfold, whatever, and then the money is enough actually. But for me, it was really more the marketing side, and I also saw or followed a lot of other projects on Kickstarter, and it is a lot of work to prepare the Kickstarter campaign. And yeah, you also have to wait with starting the Kickstarter, because as long as you don't have a community behind you, your Kickstarter campaign will most likely fail. So if you have no presence on Twitter or TikTok or wherever, and you just throw your project out on Kickstarter, it will get lost in all the other projects. So you want the same for your game. For your game, you want to have the wish list entries, that you have a successful launch, and the same also accounts for a Kickstarter campaign. You want the people to see the project or be on the remind list, that they get an email when it started, and you want to reach as high as a number as possible, so that when the Kickstarter campaign started, best would be to fulfill your goal within the first 24 to 48 hours, because then I think Kickstarter or other similar platforms will promote your game, so put it on the trending side or whatever, and you can then also use that number for marketing. Our game got funded in 24 hours, and yeah, it's just this snowball effect. The faster you get to a good number, the better you will then continue. And the same goes for Steam. If you don't have a lot of Steam wish lists and your game releases, the game just gets lost within the other, I think, 40, 50 games that release each day. And you need a successful launch. You need the first comments and ratings, so that your game gets into this trending, has a possibility to get into the trending section, and is not some fake game or whatever, because if the game doesn't get any ratings, then Steam does not consider it being a real game or a game that was programmed with a purpose, just something thrown together and then putting out into the world, and really getting the comments. The first, I think 10 I think is a milestone, and 50 or something like that. And when you reach these levels, then Steam will give you more visibility And from there onwards, it gets easier. And the faster you reach that number, the fresher your game is, the more people are interested in buying it immediately, and then it just snowballs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. Unless there was some more stuff you wanted to tell us about, I'm not
Oh,
sure.
that's everything, I think.
Okay, thank you.
I want to add a little bit to that one. Sebastian said everything that's really important about crowdfunding. In our case, we considered it too, but quickly shove it off because of the obvious marketing-related stuff. Because if there's no crowd, you can access, you have no crowdfunding result, to sum it up. But also there is another thing that we consider for ourselves, because immediately as you go out there with a crowdfunding campaign, you somehow commit yourself to actually releasing it on that schedule. I had some friends of mine who did different types of crowdfunding. The one did a kind of eco-friendly wallet. So he already had most of them produced, or at least all the resources. And another one was doing a VR-related hardware thing. And both of them actually got the money, I think. Yeah. And but then there were some technical issues. For the one, he couldn't resource enough resources, so he fell behind the deadlines. And the other ones couldn't really keep the promise of the original price because they undercalculated the certifications and those things you don't really think about when starting out. But basically, TÜV says no. So both had the problem that it's to invest so much energy into actually soothing the community that their products will be delayed, and that put us off a little bit, because especially in game development, it's hard to say when you are finished, even for bigger companies and also for small companies as compared to other projects. I think, at least in IT, it's easier to commit something to a specific deadline than I have ever done with computer games.
Yeah, really good point. By the way, can everyone still see Fabian and Danny? Because I cannot. I just see two dots, so you guys can see them?
Yeah.
I will be right back then. 1 second. Ah, okay. I can see everyone.
Now we can see you.
Thanks for letting me know, Roxy. Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. So now to our last guest, Danny. Hello, Danny. Again, why don't you tell us a bit about who you are and what you're currently working on?
Happy to. I'm Danny again. Producer, animator, marketing person, blah 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 blah. Indie game, multi-hat wearer. For Clockwork Bird, I know the name of our studio. Clockwork Bird Games. It's myself and my friend James Patton. That's what I do. That's who I am.
Okay, and I know you guys did Silicon Dreams, right? Are you still working on that actually, or?
Right.
What-
Silicon Dreams is finished. Released last April, actually. Saw a little expansion with a couple extra characters. I believe in September. But no, that is laid to rest, all finished. Aside from some little details I can't talk about yet. But for all intents and purposes, the game is finished. So as it currently is right now, we took quite a few months to take some freelance contract work, sort of refocus, reorient, decide what we really wanted to do on the heels of Silicon Dreams, judging its success. I could also talk about our experiences with crowdfunding. We tried one, it didn't go well. The end. Yeah, so we're working on a new undisclosed project and a couple unannounced changes and shakeups that I'd be happy to talk about a little bit more. Yep.
All right. Yeah, actually, before you do that and tell us more about that, I'd be interested to know how you actually got there because, you
Yes.
know, I know you used to be in the GSE,
Correct.
and that makes me very curious because I often
Mhm.
wonder about people who were in the GSE before
Mhm.
us. Where are they?
Mhm.
What are they doing?
Mhm.
So, why don't you tell us how you got into actually Clockwork Bird
Yep.
and if you were the one who co-founded it and how you did that and all of
Yep.
this.
I'm very happy to talk about it. As I said to you in our message, I believe this is sort of my one hesitation when I talk to students or people who want to get into the industry and share my experience, because I don't think many people will have the same experience that I did. I sort of just met the right people at the right time and slid right into where I'm at without too much friction at all. So yes, I think it's important to mention for things that come later. I am from the United States. Did my bachelor's degree in Seattle in communication, interpersonal communication, intercultural communication, all these lovely ideas about how we talk to one another. Through life circumstances, ended up being able to move to Austria, lived in Vienna for a time, moved to Klagenfurt, was one of the first students to apply and be accepted to the GSE program. Had a lovely time there. Had a wonderful time. Learned so many things, so many, yeah, fantastic. I loved my time. We'll leave it there for now. But it was actually to fulfill my requirement for the internship of the program that I left Klagenfurt, again, as some of the others were mentioning, because there were just no opportunities there for aspiring indie game development or game development of any sort, really, especially several years ago. So I ended up moving to Graz, hoping to get in with Rarebite or Bongfish or one of the other smaller indies in the area. But at that time, as I was looking for those more official roles, James Patton reached out to me. He was a solo dev from the UK originally. We met at the Reversed Festival in Vienna, renamed now to the Radius Fest, or the other way around. I don't remember. Anyhow, we met there in 2016, just having to really hit it off. Started talking games, narrative, role playing, etc., etc. And so stayed in touch. Made a couple games just as side projects. And then it was after the release of his game Spinortality that he was able to make enough money to be able to afford hiring me. So his company, he's still Einzelunternehmer, officially, legally, and I'm his employee, but sort of we co-founded and sort of rebranded under this new name in association, kind of. So it's all kind of mishy-mashy, unclear. And like I said, I just happened to meet him at a conference, and we happened to hit it off, and he happened to reach out to me, and he happened to sell enough copies of his game to hire me. So I have a lot of advice now, a couple years in, looking back.
So it's kind of like the stars aligned.
100%. That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, there's really no other way to put it. So I don't have any just really work on your portfolio or make sure you practice because that will land you, because I don't know. I was looking for an internship and that turned into a full-time job. So I just got lucky in that regard. Yeah.
And I mean, that was really, you said 6 years ago you met him and you're still there. And it's also interesting to hear because we heard very different stories, like from Fabian, who said that he's always working other jobs at the side, and from Sebastian, who said he now quit to go full time. So you're
Yeah.
always an indie dev full time, basically.
Sorry. No, I think I sort of mixed up the times a little bit. So yeah, during university, I was working multiple jobs, grocery stores, restaurants, typical not great paying jobs. But it was in 2016 that I met Jamie, and we kept in touch over the following years. And then after I moved away from Klagenfurt in 2018 to start looking for an internship, is when he reached out. Was sort of late 2019 that he'd reached out with a position. So we've only been working together for about 2 years now.
But still, you're only working at this studio, right? So now
Currently,
you
yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
side
Yeah.
jobs. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really lucky in that regard. I think we've both we're both open to the possibility that it may come to that. Like if the finances don't work out for whatever reason, that part-time jobs are always a fallback. That can always work. But we've just been lucky enough that we've been able to devote our full time and attention to working on the projects that we want to work on.
Yeah, it's really great to hear that can work out that way.
Yeah.
So you said that the kind of traditional roles are kind of divided between the two of you. So
yeah, I mean it's game dev. There are certain things that just have to be done. So what do I mean by that? Someone needs to program how the game works, and someone needs to make the models and the textures and the art and on and on and on. So in that regard, we do like share those traditional roles and split them up to our abilities and based on who has time. I think this is where I can give my first really big piece of advice from my experience. Based on the development of Silicon Dreams and how I sort of entered game development, sort of just being thrown straight into the water. I was coming straight off of the university, so no practical experience. This was all theoretical. I was always interested in the more sort of esoteric narrative themes and such. I am not from the technical side as the previous two are. So a lot of these things were pretty new to me, and I think I mistakenly assumed that the way to get good at something is just to keep doing it over and over again. And so during development of Silicon Dreams, I was trying to improve my 3D modeling. So I would just make a 3D model and make a 3D model and make a 3D model and start from scratch and try animating on my own. And I didn't understand 80% of the interface and 90% of the settings menu when I was working in animations, and everything took 10 times longer than it needed to. So what I've learned from that is, in my experience as someone who has to switch from texturing to UV work to animating and then into level design, when you're in sort of this position to have to do a lot of things, I've found that the solution is to find someone else who solved the problem already. Find something pre-made. Find a model that's kind of almost exactly what you want and then tweak it. Or find some free animations, or find just a script or a package that does the function that you want. And through doing that, you can make a lot of forward progress, not get hung up on this, I don't know how to solve this really complicated problem because my skills aren't enough issue. And rather, you can just get a prototype going and understand an already working thing in context and then tweak it how you need. So just as a general piece of advice, I would encourage you, like, find something that's finished and tweak that rather than banging your head against the sort of need to make everything from scratch in your game. Because at least in my experience, it didn't work out very well. I ended up spending multiple days on models and animations that never saw their way into a final product. And it's just a silly waste of time. Why didn't I download a royalty-free model and find some free animation files that would have taken all of 30 minutes? And then if we don't use them, whatever. At least you have them, right? So, just to summarize, that's been something that the both of us, Jamie and myself, have really been focusing on as we're sort of shifting our process and our understanding of the kind of games that we want to make. We're seeing huge benefits already from trying to be as lazy as possible.
Interesting stance,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
I guess this also comes a bit from wanting to be authentic or putting
Yeah.
something authentic out there, that you don't
Mhm.
want to use
Mhm.
pre-made stuff. But I kind of also recognize this as something that programmers do a lot, because it is the smart thing to do, like
Yeah.
try to find the solution, like someone has already come to the solution online. So
Right.
Yeah, I think this falls in the category of work smarter, not harder.
100%.
mhm.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's sort of it. It sounds strange because we're so used to the word lazy having a stigma attached to it, that being lazy is a bad thing. But if in the way that I think about it, and this work smarter, not harder mentality, being lazy is just asking the question, why would I spend days learning how to write a script to do character animations procedurally when I can just find someone who's already done it and whack it into my game in 10 minutes? It's a non-issue, really, especially when you're considering being an employee, not being a hobbyist or a student working on a project, but working for a business where every hour actually costs something, and you can watch that bank account balance shrink down, right? That it encourages a very different mentality to sort of
Yeah, and
work
if you
ethic
if
and
you and if
laziness.
you do want to learn how to do stuff from scratch, better to do it like more in your free time, something
Hmm.
gradually, not have it on the clock or whatever.
Yeah.
And because that also leads to a certain pressure
Hmm.
that that you feel the need that you have to master it in
Yeah.
a way. So
Yeah.
I would also say that it's, if you really go the game dev route or solo game dev, it is really important to focus on the stuff that you are good at
Hmm.
and try to find easy solutions for the other parts.
Right.
Like paying a 3D artist is a good idea, but buying a free asset pack from Unity will be like 100 times cheaper.
Yeah.
Or just
Yeah.
go to penny.nl and
Yep.
take everything there.
Yep. There's so many resources for getting basically everything you could ever need,
Amazing.
paid or otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. Like one of our sayings that we befriended during Silicon Dreams development was, sometimes the best way to pay for something is with money, right? And not with time, and not with your frustration, and not for some tool.
Yeah.
Just have someone do it for you.
The only thing in the game community, it is, some consider it bad when you're using pre-made assets, but in the
Okay.
end, if the game is great, and the players will not know that you have used some pre-made assets,
Yeah.
and if they
I
had
think-
fun, that's the whole thing about the game.
Yeah.
Just
say
have-
that the issue in that case, one of the criticisms that I heard was about Yandere Simulator, for example, was the fact that it basically used pre-made assets and they weren't modified at all. And it was a crowd-funded project that has been going on for years.
Mm,
So I feel like, it's just using pre-made assets in itself. I don't think it's a bad thing. For
Yeah.
me, it also reminds me of the whole argument about people who basically don't really know how art works. They
Mhm.
complain about how artists are not supposed to use references. They're supposed to make everything from imagination, but
Right.
that's kind of bullshit because
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Personally, I think it's entirely a non-issue. Like anywhere where
also
copyright is
the stuff
not
is already
involved.
there. The
Right.
stuff is there,
the-
you can
the-
either use it or not. So
the
Yeah.
stuff was made to be used, so
100%. Yep. If you're using it legally, you own the rights to it, royalty-free, Creative Commons or otherwise, whatever. Like, tweak it, alter it. Don't. You own the rights. If someone has it, if someone doesn't like pre-made assets, whatever, they can get over themselves. This is sort of, maybe this is a good time to talk about why Steam doesn't work well for us.
More about that.
Silicon,
Yeah.
bring in the
Silicon
popcorn.
Dreams. Yeah, bring in the popcorn a little bit. So the development story for Silicon Dreams is an interesting one. I was freshly hired at the end of 2019. Never worked on a game of this scope before in my life. This is Jamie's fourth or fifth, depending on where you start counting experimental games. So he had the concept. I came in and just jumped right on. It was supposed to be a 6-month project. oops, 18 months later, game is finished. And it's a bit of a weird one. I don't know how many of you have played it or are familiar, but it's like if Papers, Please and the Void Conf test from Blade Runner had a baby and taught it how to write like a novel. Yeah, so it's basically a visual novel in game form, and it's weird and strange, and the visuals are odd, and the animations are weird, and it's not very. It doesn't have a lot of market appeal, and we don't have a huge audience. But we're also kind of fine with that. I don't know. So I'm just kind of rambling about our experience now and how we're shifting things up in the face of new information. So, Jamie and I both, from our personalities, are much more interested in making scrappy, weird narrative shit than in making like a nicely polished, marketable single A or indie hit, indie darling. Like that's not our wheelhouse. We want to sort of, if we had our way, we would be like pushing what it means to do narrative in video games in strange ways. And I think Silicon Dreams is a good example of that. So yeah, we've just decided that this long dev cycle, big project, huge investment, huge risk sort of paradigm doesn't really work for us, and we're in the early phases of starting to explore like 3-month dev cycle games on a pay what you want crowdfunded model is what we're hoping to end up with. So something like Patreon, but without the fees that they take, where anyone can pay any amount of money as they choose and get all the same rewards. There's no discrimination in tiers. It's all transparent, giving people access to sort of our working process and what's going on in our heads, because just in looking at the numbers, like that's our marketability, is not in trying to have this huge appeal on a huge marketplace like Steam, but rather finding our little niche and inviting everyone to come join the family, our little group of weirdos. So yeah, this is all unannounced, unofficial, in the works stuff still, but I'm really excited about it, and progress has been fantastic. Like we're a month into development on our current project, and it's a little bit mind-boggling to see this, like the comparison from Silicon Dreams day 0 to when it was at like a semi-workable state to now this new project in 30 days or so, and where we've already got basic systems and a pretty decent shader setup, nice stylized graphics, and on, just because we've been doing this laziness approach, and how much stuff can we find for free, what problems have been solved already, and how can we just stitch it together in our own way that serves this vision of the game that we want without us having to do all of the busy behind the scenes work that's already been done before.
So one thing that I'm wondering is, so you're working, the two of you, and you've kind of found your groove together. Were you ever thinking of also expanding and having someone else join you?
Absolutely. Yeah, these are definitely far future plans, depending on how the crowdfunding goes, I suppose. But that's going to be the success of that campaign is going to be the gauge of sort of our longevity and whether this plan is going to work out or not. Because it's such that if it's such that this allows us to sort of pay ourselves industry standard and then some, then we look into finding a social media person that we can hire on board, or we find an artist that we can contract out or have on retainer, or who knows what, right? But as sort of if and when our little niche decides to grow, then we can grow right alongside it. And I would like to see that happen, bearing in mind that we're a couple weirdos, and having someone who's a good fit could be tricky.
And also, what I'm curious about, would you take interns?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I was in discussion with Felix for quite some time about looking into this, but then just the busyness of game development and sort of a little bit of the bureaucracy, and we're a bit smaller and kind of on a shoestring budget, and weren't even working on our own project for several months, so it was all just up in the air. But absolutely, hopefully, even by the end of the year, we can have that organized and we can be ready to take some people on.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of positions, like what kind of things would be available for an intern to do?
Sure. It always depends on the makeup of the indie studio, but I'd say for anyone in the like 1 to 4 employee range, this will probably be the same. You might have heard me touch on it at the start that like I'm a producer and a game designer and a level designer and an animator and a texturer, right? If you can do any of those things, there'll probably be work for you to do. If you can do any of those things and are interested in learning to do other things, even better. I think, yeah, I've never interviewed anyone. I've never been part of that process, but if I were just to have to figure out who would be allowed, such strange language, about who the right fit for us would be.
Yeah, like what is the criteria?
Yeah, I think skill in a portfolio is only a small part of that for me. I think much more important is personality to a certain extent, but I think the most crucial is sort of communication style. This is, again, for me, a really huge thing and part of one of the factors of the success I think Jamie and I have seen working together as friends and sort of co-owner, co-founder, colleagues, people with social anxiety, et cetera, is that I put a lot of importance on communication and sort of open, honest, vulnerable, transparent, everything all the way down. So I think someone who would be able to communicate like that is very important. And to give a little more insight about why it's so important is the way that Jamie and I have chosen to run, as far as employees are concerned, is just basically 100% employee centric, like employee well-being focused work practices. So
no crunch time.
Zero crunch time. Always. If you cannot work, you do not work. You're the judge of what cannot means. If it's because you're a little bit sick or you're tired or you pushed really hard the last day because you were excited and your brain's just a little hazy, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no point in a management or a hierarchy telling a person when they can or cannot be creative, especially in an industry like this, especially when indies like us have so many things to do all at once. It's a very demanding job. So I think that sort of expectation for ourselves, that like you work when you can and you don't work when you can't. Something like that is very dependent on communication and on trust and on being open and honest. So going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but
yeah, I get it.
I think that would be sort of one of the biggest criteria, in addition to what can you do and what do you want to do, and where does that fit in with our needs.
One thing that's slightly fitting to what you just told, what I'm very curious about is, because you did the master's program, how well do you think this prepared you for the job, actually?
That's a really good question.
Mm.
I don't think, let's see, how do I say this that's accurate and not misleading?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask something. Does anyone know if this is recorded?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because someone just asked because they couldn't be here. So good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And help, where was I?
You were just thinking about if the GSE program prepared
Right.
you for the job.
Thank you.
Mm,
No, my selection of courses in the GSE did not prepare me for this job. And so I say that pretty intentionally. Like, I didn't choose the right courses that I needed, but also not all of the courses that I would have liked to have, knowing what I know now, were available or could have been provided in the first early years, right? So I'm very aware that I was part of the program during its edgy experimental phase, where I didn't quite know what it was about. Um, so I'm not sure what it looks like now, but from my experience, it was I was much more interested in the theoretical and the sort of exploration of video games as a genre, as a medium, as an art form, as something capable of conveying story and meaning. And so I didn't do the courses on how to get an FBX with embedded animations and textures into Unity. I just don't know how to do that. You now know what tutorials I've been watching recently. So does that answer the question? From a technical perspective, no. But from a perspective of being able to create and design a good game, I think absolutely yes.
Yeah, maybe the question was posed kind of in a bad way, because if you would have said no, that's like, oh, the program is crap. What I actually wanted to know is like what you took away from the program, and or how would it have been different if you would have started doing indie dev without having done the program?
Yeah.
Would you be creative differently now, or would
Yeah.
your working style be different?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely would. And just to address the earlier thing, I hope it came through clearly that what I was saying is no, I wasn't prepared, but the program was also not crap. So
Yes, it
as
was
long as
very
that's clear.
different.
Good.
Yeah.
How would it have been different?
Here,
Sorry?
that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the program is it evolves over the years, and I think it got better and better. And I can recommend it 100% for everybody, because I already did a master program on the technical side, but more in the mechatronics style, which was something I was interested, but the passion was not there as much as for video games. And the thing is that in my old studies, you went to the lecture with the professor, which sometimes was, I don't know, 60-year-old guy that was just shortly before his retirement, and he was just teaching you electronics or whatever. And after the lecture, you just went home or to the next one. But in the GSE lecture, you have everybody who's doing the studies is loving video games, and it's their passion, and it's also the passion of the professors. And sometimes you could sit together with your professor and just talk the whole day about all kinds of video games and what they did great in this one and that one. And it was the first few days in this master program were so much more interesting and fun than in my last master program. So
I can
it's really
completely
amazing.
I
And
can
when
repeat everything you just said. I completely agree.
Yeah, and when it comes to if the program prepares you for starting out as a game dev, as a solo dev, or whatever, it's the program alone will not do it. You have to invest your time, and you really have to go the extra step and go to the library and get the books, read through it. And if you really are interested and invest this extra time, do a little bit more than it asks from you. It is asked for if you have to make a video game. Do a little bit more, not do the minimum, and try to really get out as much out of it as possible, and not just finishing it.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, actually, that I'd like to focus on. I don't think this program can prepare you to be an indie dev. I also don't think any other master's program could or should be able to prepare you entirely for what it means to be an indie dev, because there's just no point in having all of that taught to you,
Yeah,
especially if we're talking about becoming an indie dev. It's so much about you finding your own way in how to do these things, you learning your own style and growing, and you have to be
also
willing to
there,
put yourself into that in addition to the program. Yeah.
and also there is no how do we say it? No recipe for success. So everybody is going their own way. As you said, you met the right people at the right time, and it's just really about going your way and trying your best.
Yeah.
And
what I will say, I don't know if this is still as important a topic in the program as it was with me, but I think it's very true. Though it didn't prepare me for all of the tasks and responsibilities of being a game developer, I think it did prepare me. Like I could work anywhere in games. I could be in a 2-person studio. I could be in a middle 30-person studio. I could be at a AAA. And I think I could do equally well in any of those, in part because of understanding the entirety of the process and because of the sort of interdisciplinarity of the program and all of the different areas of game development that you touch by necessity. I think it prepares for many different types of employment.
This is really good PR for our program. I'm glad we're putting it on YouTube. So, yeah, thanks for that answer. One last question from me would be, what's your best piece of advice
My best piece of
for
advice.
for a person who wants to become an indie game dev?
Yep. Okay. So I'll skip over the one that I already gave, but I'll reiterate it. Take other people's work if it's freely available. It's been made, so use it. My biggest piece of advice after that, it sort of builds upon it, is just make things. Just make a thing. Take other people's work, slap it together in a weird way, make a model move in a way or make an animation move in a way that's not supposed to, but that kind of looks cool and makes you giggle. Like, just experiment, make stuff, figure out how you can stick it together and pull it apart and rearrange it. You'll have a great time and you'll learn so much about what it means to put these parts together to make a functioning game.
And also make a lot of game jams.
Yeah.
Participate in them. And it's great to do something So for me, game jams are really great because I have this deadline that is in just 48 hours or whatever short period of time, and it really forces me a little bit to work, but I also like it, so it's not that hard, that bad that I'm being forced. And I always try to work on a new kind of game.
Yeah.
I never do the same game twice for a game jam, and especially if you have a game jam, if you have the option to participate in a local game jam like in Klagenfurt or in Graz, go there.
Yeah.
The people you meet will you never know who you meet there and who will be your new partner. So I, for example, found or met my music and sound guy on the global game jam in Graz before the whole Corona stuff started, one month before. And he's now one of my best friends and now also part of my team.
Yeah.
And amazing.
On the topic of game jams, just a final comment. I do have an appointment I have to get to. Spending 1 week to make 4 games. So like making 4 games 1 week each, you will learn much more than making a single game in 4 weeks.
Yes.
Right? I said that in the worst way, most confusing way possible. 4 smaller games, better than 1 big game. There we go.
Okay, thank you for all the advice, guys. Yeah, this last one, it makes total sense. So from the audience, are there any more questions for any?
Yeah, I do. So you told us a lot of do's. What about the don'ts?
The don'ts of game dev?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Like maybe some pitfalls, some things you might trap yourself in, things to keep in mind.
Yeah. I think some of them were already included in the do's, right? Like don't be a perfectionist. Don't think that you have to make everything from scratch. Let's see, in terms of like well-being and mental health, don't put so much pressure on yourself. In terms of work efficiency, I think we have the science to back it up now. I'm pretty sure there are enough reports about this being true. If we need to boil it down to pure like work hours, like it is better to stop working for a day if you're tired, and then the next day do that task in 30 minutes that would have taken you 4 hours if you tried to push through the day before when you were tired. Just take a break. You don't always have to be working. Let's see, other don'ts.
I guess what came up before, I don't know if there was a consensus about this, but I think I heard the consensus: don't do crowdfunding. Pretty much.
Well, that's difficult. I would say
Not
in
rely on it.
general, like a crowdfunding campaign, like if we don't get the money in 30 days, we don't make it. I would steer away from that. I can't steer away from crowdfunding in general because that's the current sort of marketing strategy that we're pursuing. I think true crowdfunding, where people, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. It's like people choosing to support a developer because of what they make, rather than saying that game looks cool, I want that. I think that's already a very different transaction.
So it's sort of a thing like, oh, I've tried something of theirs in the past from this game dev team, and so I trust in their future projects, and I'm excited for what they might have.
Yeah.
I've
I
seen
think
that.
that kind of crowdfunding is
yeah.
really cool. I think
And that's sort of a brand
like
loyalty.
decentralized future, right? Where your game devs aren't reliant on publishers and aren't reliant on huge investments of money, but if they have an established fan base and have found a market, then the people who like the stuff that they make can give them money for making it.
Sorry to interrupt, but it also comes down that if you have a brand, so if you don't have a brand, then you need to go towards that approach.
Yeah, it's a really complicated question, and it's going to be different for every different constellation of people who try to make a company and figure out what works for them, right? Yeah. So working on a game for 18 months and releasing it on Steam and riding that wave of social media success, like some people are really good at that. I absolutely abhor social media. I try to spend as little time on it as possible, so that's not a very good strategy for me. So yeah, it's just it's all about making the kind of thing you want to make and tweaking what doesn't work so that it works in the future.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I've heard you mention. You said that you don't publish your works on Steam. Where do you upload them?
We do. We've uploaded all of our games on Steam and will continue to upload our games on Steam. What I was trying to say is this sort of paradigm of we've been working on this game for 18 months. It releases on Steam this day. It's going to sell X amount in the first 30 days. And pretty deterministically, that first 30 days will tell you how long you'll make money for, right? So if you don't hit it big at the start, you're not going to make a lot of money. And that's not a model that works well for us. So we're gonna scrap it and do something different. Our games will still be on Steam, but this sort of big release, huge flux of money paradigm,
it's not ideal.
Is not ideal for the kind of games that we want to make, right? Like off the wall kind of weird niche narrative games don't perform very well on Steam. So this is not a business model that's going to work for us. But for something like a webbing journey or a game with a longer dev cycle and a huge social media following, that looks totally different.
Okay. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Fabian and Sebastian, for all your input. We heard a lot of different stuff and advice and opinions today. That was great. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a
Thank
wonderful.
you. It was really amazing.